Hello, knowledge seekers, and welcome back. Get ready, because we're diving deep again. Today, we're tackling a topic that's, well, buzzing everywhere if you're watching tech and the planet. We're looking at a potential short-term energy crisis.
That's right, and a big part of that conversation, maybe the newest part, is artificial intelligence.
Yeah, AI is definitely front and center, but it's not the only piece of this puzzle, is it? We'll be looking at the whole picture.
Exactly. To really grasp what we might be facing, we've gone through quite a few revealing sources. We're talking detailed reports from the International Energy Agency, forecasting from Goldman Sachs Research, studies looking at climate change impacts on energy infrastructure, and even some specific regional examples.
Okay, so what's our mission for this deep dive?
Well, we want to break down the key factors that could, trigger this potential crisis. We'll try to map out a likely timeline and obviously weigh up some possible solutions. And like this, it'll zoom in on a specific case.
Right. And for everyone listening, the learner in all of us understanding this intersection of tech, global economics, and energy challenges is, well, it's crucial. It gives us a clearer view of the risks, definitely, but maybe also the opportunities if we tackle this smartly. Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the big driver, AI. How did this incredibly powerful technology become such an energy concern?
It's fascinating, isn't it? You have this technology we think of as sort of digital intangible.
Yeah.
But its impact on the physical world through energy use is very, very real.
Mm-hmm.
These advanced language models like GPT-3, GPT-4, they need just immense computing power.
Right.
And that computational demand translates directly into a huge appetite for electricity to power the data centers where they're trained and run.
Can we put some numbers on that?
Sure. So training GPT-3, for example, is estimated to have used around 12,287 megawatt hours, and maybe even more striking for everyday use. A single query on something like ChatGPT could use up to 10 times the energy of a standard Google search.
Wow, 10 times. Okay, that really puts the scale into perspective. And the future projections for this consumption aren't exactly easing up, are they?
No, not at all. Goldman Sachs Research, they're forecasting a 165% increase in data center energy demand by 2030, compared to just last year, 2023.
165%.
Yeah. And the International Energy Agency, the IEA, they're possibly even more stark. They project that demand from AI-optimized data centers could quadruple, maybe even more, by 2030.
Quadruple.
And it's not just the total amount of energy, it's how it's used. AI workloads, especially generative AI, need much more intense computational power. That's driven mainly by GPUs, graphics processing units.
Okay.
And this higher compute demand means higher power density. So you need more power packed into a smaller space, which then leads to much more intensive cooling needs compared to, traditional data center operations.
Got it. So it's like we've shifted from running an economy car to a high-performance racing engine very quickly in terms of energy needs and operational demands. And where is this surge expected to hit hardest geographically?
Well, connecting that to the global picture, the U.S. is expected to see a really significant jump. Projections suggest it could account for nearly half of the global increase by 2030.
Half? Wow.
Yeah. China is also looking like a major contributor to that demand growth. And we can't forget Europe. It's also anticipating a significant rise as AI data centers spread. In fact, some forecasts suggest that by 2030, the energy used just by AI supporting data centers in the US alone could exceed the total consumption of a country like Japan.
That's quite something, and honestly a bit worrying when you think about the implications. Which brings us straight to the critical question. Is our current energy infrastructure actually ready for such a dramatic ramp-up in demand?
That really raises fundamental questions, doesn't it, about the resilience of our infrastructure, the adequacy of our energy resources to just absorb this rapid growth.
Yeah.
The sheer scale of the projected demand, especially how it's concentrated in certain areas, could create serious strain. Maybe even localized crises.
Can we get more specific on the numbers, the terawatt hours?
Okay, so the IEA estimates global data center electricity consumption will be around, say, 415 terawatt hours this year, 2024. But they see that potentially rising to about 945 terawatt hours by 2030.
Doubling, more than doubling.
Pretty much. For the US, the projection is roughly 240 TWS this year, growing to maybe 480 TWS by 2030. China, maybe 104 TWS, growing to around 279 TWH. And Europe, from about 62 TWS to near 107 TWH. These are IEA figures, and the 2030 regional ones are sort of derived from their global growth projections, but they give a clear sense of the scale of the challenge.
It's clear AI has become this major disruptive factor in the global energy equation, but as you pointed out at the start, it's not the only thing we need to worry about. What other factors are feeding into this potential short-term energy crunch?
Exactly. While the booming energy demand from AI is new and significant, the global energy system already had some pretty major vulnerabilities. Geopolitical instability is a big one here. Yeah. Events like the war in Ukraine really highlighted how disruptions to energy production and supply chains can cause massive price spikes and shortages. This hits countries relying on energy imports particularly hard. And, trade wars, sanctions, they also ripple through global energy markets.
And then there's the factor that's crucial long-term, but also causes short-term stress: climate change itself.
Absolutely. Extreme weather events getting more intense and frequent because of climate change can physically damage energy infrastructure. They can reduce operational efficiency, interrupt supply. Think about prolonged droughts hitting hydropower capacity.
Or extreme heat waves reducing solar panel efficiency.
Precisely. And even the transition to renewables, which is obviously essential long-term for sustainability, presents its own short to medium-term challenges. Solar and wind are intermittent, right? So we need big advances in energy storage solutions, batteries, pumped hydro, etc., plus upgrading our grids to handle and distribute renewable energy efficiently. That's a huge, complex undertaking. It can face technical hurdles, political opposition, social barriers,
permitting issues, local resistance.
All of that. And we also can't ignore the debate around investment in traditional fossil fuels.
That's another tricky one.
It is. The increasing push for ESG investing, environmental, social, governance criteria, and just general uncertainty about future demand might lead to underinvestment in new oil and gas projects. Now, if the renewable transition happens slower than planned, that lack of investment could actually cause fossil fuel supply shortages down the line. And of course, geopolitics comes back in, restricting access to certain reserves.
So it's really a convergence.
Exactly. The potential energy crisis we're looking at is really the result of this complex interplay between surging AI demand and these pre-existing vulnerabilities in the global energy system.
Okay, so pulling this together, what does it mean in terms of probability? And crucially, when might we really start to feel the effects of this potential crisis?
The consensus emerging from various analyses is quite concerning. We mentioned the IEA warning that data center electricity demand could outstrip Japan's total consumption by 2030. Goldman Sachs reaffirms their projection, 165% increase in data center energy demand by the end of the decade.
Right.
The U.S. Department of Energy thinks data center load could double or even triple much sooner, potentially by 2028.
That's just a few years away.
It is. And then there's NERC, the North American Electric Reliability Corporation. They're warning that over half of North America is at risk of power outages in the next 10 years.
More than half of North America. And their reports flag major regions: MISO, SPP, New England, PJM, Texas, California. These aren't exactly sparsely populated areas.
Not at all. Significant economic hubs. And while the biggest absolute growth is projected for the US and China, other places like Europe and parts of Asia will also see substantial increases.
What are the potential tipping points? What could push us over the edge?
Several things could act as tipping points. Limitations in grid capacity, just not being able to move the power where it's needed. Delays in building new energy infrastructure. An increasing frequency of those extreme weather events hitting power plants or transmission lines. And simply greater competition for energy resources as AI deployment really scales up globally.
So the bottom line on the forecast?
The bottom line seems to be a high probability of an energy crisis in the near future. That period between, say, 2025 and 2030 looks particularly critical. Though it's important to stress, the risk level will likely vary quite a bit from region to region.
And if this scenario, this potential crisis, does materialize, what are the likely consequences for everyday life, the economy, society?
The socioeconomic impacts could be really significant. Widespread increases in energy prices. That fuels inflation across the board.
Right, cost of living goes up.
Exactly. It impacts living costs, potentially slows down economic growth. Energy-intensive industries could see their profitability and competitiveness suffer.
So even though AI might boost the global economy,
its energy demands could potentially cancel out some of those gains if we don't manage it sustainably. That's the fear.
What about the social impact?
Higher energy prices can really worsen energy poverty, disproportionately hitting lower-income households. That could potentially lead to social unrest, widening the gap between those with reliable energy access and those without.
And there are health impacts too, right?
Definitely. Energy insecurity affects physical and mental health. Think cold homes, increasing risks of respiratory or cardiovascular issues. Plus, if demand surges lead to greater reliance on older power plants or backup generators, that could mean more air pollution, impacting public health and the environment.
So summing that up, this potential crisis driven by AI and these other factors could cause major socioeconomic disruption, hitting the most vulnerable hardest.
That's the concern, yes.
Given this picture you've painted, the key question becomes, what can we actually do about it? Are there viable strategies to mitigate the impact and ensure energy security going forward?
Thankfully, yes, there are several strategies we can and really need to pursue. First off, energy efficiency is absolutely fundamental, both within the AI infrastructure itself.
Like optimizing algorithms, developing smaller models, more efficient hardware.
Exactly. And also across all industries and even in our homes, innovative cooling tech for data centers is also crucial. And interestingly, AI itself could be part of the solution here, helping optimize energy use through smart grids, predictive maintenance for energy infrastructure, better demand management.
Using AI to manage AI's footprint, essentially.
In a way, yes. Then, of course, we absolutely need massively increased investment in renewable energy sources, solar, wind, and critically energy storage solutions, batteries, pump hydro, other emerging tech to tackle that intermittency issue and ensure grid stability.
Reducing fossil fuel reliance, cutting emissions.
That's the goal. We also urgently need to modernize our power grids, transmission, distribution. They need upgrades to handle higher demand and integrate all that renewable energy effectively.
Which requires significant investment and probably streamlining the process for building new infrastructure.
Absolutely. Permitting reform is often a big part of that discussion. And finally, government policies and international collaboration are vital. Things like incentives for renewables and efficiency, regulations, maybe carbon pricing mechanisms.
And working together across borders.
Essential. Sharing best practices, developing sustainable AI standards, ensuring equitable access to clean energy tech globally. So it really has to be a multifaceted approach. Cutting demand through efficiency, boosting clean energy supply, upgrading infrastructure, and having supportive policies in place.
Okay, let's bring this closer to home now with that specific example you mentioned earlier. Spain. How does its energy landscape look in the face of this potential crisis?
Spain presents a really interesting picture, kind of a mix of strengths and vulnerabilities. On the one hand, they've made significant strides in renewables. Renewables are already a big part of their electricity mix, though they still rely quite heavily on imported fossil fuels.
They have ambitious targets for 2030, right?
Very ambitious. And Spain has huge potential, particularly in solar, and is positioning itself as a potential green hydrogen hub for Europe. However, they also face challenges with energy poverty, and electricity prices can be relatively high compared to other European countries.
And that projection about AI demand matching Spain's total consumption.
Yeah, the projection that the AI sector alone could consume as much electricity as the whole of Spain by perhaps 2027. That's obviously a major concern. It poses a significant challenge to their energy system. So Spain really needs to balance its AI ambitions with its sustainability goals and its energy transition plans. It's a tightrope walk.
And I understand Spain also faces some specific challenges with its grid infrastructure and energy storage capacity.
That's right. Existing limitations in the grid, both transmission and distribution, and the need for more energy storage capacity are significant hurdles. They need to overcome these to effectively integrate the large amounts of renewable energy they're capable of generating.
But there are opportunities too.
Definitely. Spain's abundant renewable resources give it a unique opportunity to potentially lead aspects of the energy transition in Europe, and maybe even mitigate some of the impacts of a global energy crunch, at least domestically. And you see interesting initiatives happening, like in regions such as Granada, focusing on community energy projects to tackle energy poverty and deploy renewables locally.
So for Spain, progress on renewables is good, but the potential AI demand surge is a major test.
Precisely. It really demands proactive measures to address those existing vulnerabilities, energy poverty, grid limitations. But that strong renewable potential provides a solid foundation for building resilience and potentially taking a leadership role.
Okay, to wrap up this really comprehensive analysis, what's the single main takeaway our listeners should walk away with?
I think the key takeaway is that the convergence of rapid AI deployment and these existing global energy challenges creates a very high likelihood of a significant energy crisis in the near future. And that demands proactive, integrated solutions on a global scale.
And the solution, as we've explored throughout this deep dive, really lies in that comprehensive approach. Boosting energy efficiency, massively expanding renewables, modernizing our grids, and implementing supportive global policies.
That sums it up well.
And now, for all you knowledge seekers listening, we leave you with a thought to ponder. Considering AI's immense transformative potential and its growing energy appetite, how can we ensure this revolutionary technology helps build a more sustainable future rather than worsening the global challenges we already face?
A fundamental question indeed for the future we're all building together.
Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive. We're really looking forward to reading your comments and thoughts on this crucial topic. If you found this valuable, please give us a like, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future explorations, and hit that notification bell to stay updated. Until next time, keep seeking knowledge.
Take care, everyone.